Stop waiting. Start doing. What if I told you that your burning desire to be perfect is the very thing holding you back? Think about it. We've all been sold this idea of the perfect moment, the flawless plan, a vision where every star aligns and every possible problem is solved before we even dare to take the first step. But what if that's all a lie? What if it's a beautiful, elaborate trap your own mind sets to keep you safe and stuck? This is about how one tiny, imperfect action can shatter that trap and change everything. For years, I was a master of waiting. I was the king of almost ready. I had notebooks overflowing with plans, computer folders bursting with research, and a mind that could play out 1,000 failure scenarios in a split second. The story I told myself: I was being diligent. I was committed to excellence. But the truth? I was terrified. And that terror, wearing a clever disguise of high standards, kept me frozen. It kept my dreams circling overhead, never getting clearance to land. This isn't just my story. It's the writer with a brilliant novel all mapped out, who's been staring at a blank page for a year. It is the entrepreneur with a world-changing idea who spends all their time tweaking the logo instead of making that first sale. It's for anyone who has ever felt the crushing weight of their own potential and, instead of being launched by it, has been paralyzed into doing nothing at all. If that sounds familiar, if you feel that knot in your stomach right now, you're in the right place, because today we're going to untie that knot. The Great Lie: Deconstructing the Perfectionism Trap. First things first, let's call this what it really is. The kind of perfectionism that freezes you isn't a healthy drive for excellence. It's not about having high standards. It's a shield, a defense mechanism. It's fear wearing a tuxedo, the most elegant and socially acceptable form of procrastination there is. Because who's going to argue with wanting to do something perfectly? It sounds noble, it sounds dedicated. But peel it back, and you find a deeply rooted fear of judgment. At its core, paralyzing perfectionism comes from the toxic belief that our self-worth is tied to a flawless performance. We've been taught that if we create something and it gets criticized, it's not the work being judged, it's us. If we launch a business and it fails, it's not the business model that was flawed, we are the failure. This all-or-nothing thinking creates stakes that are impossibly high. When every single action becomes a referendum on your value as a human being, it's no wonder the safest choice feels like no action at all. And this isn't just in your head, it's happening in your body. When you face a task your brain has labeled high stakes, it can trigger your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. This sends your nervous system into fight, flight, or freeze mode. For the perfectionist procrastinator, the response is almost always freeze. That feeling of being stuck, of your mind going blank, of being completely unable to start. That is perfection paralysis. It's your brain's ancient survival wiring screaming that this task is a threat, and the only way to stay safe is to avoid it. You're not lazy. Your brain is actively trying to protect you from what it sees as a real danger, the danger of proving you not good enough. Your mind is also incredibly clever at justifying this state. It doesn't say, "I'm terrified of what people will think." It crafts a much more sophisticated story. It says, "I just need to do a little more research." It says, "The timing isn't quite right." Or the classic, "If I can't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing at all." This is the lie of impossible starting conditions. Your brain creates a checklist for the perfect scenario that can never be met, ensuring you stay safely in the planning stage, forever shielded from the risk of judgment. The plan becomes a beautiful cage. You spend all your time decorating it, reinforcing the bars, and polishing the lock, all while telling yourself you're preparing to fly. The tragic irony is that this quest for perfection doesn't produce better results. It produces no results. It leads to missed deadlines, unlaunched projects, and unspoken ideas. That writer waiting for the perfect opening line could have written and rewritten 10 imperfect first chapters in the same amount of time, getting closer to perfect with every try. The pursuit of perfection isn't the pursuit of quality, it's the enemy of progress. We have to break the cycle. And it doesn't start with a grand gesture. It starts with something small, messy, and beautifully imperfect. For me, this paralysis took the physical form of a single 4-foot plank of pine wood. It was a simple shelf I'd bought for a simple purpose, to hold a few books and plants in my home office. For months, it just leaned against the wall, a silent monument to my inability to start. This project should have taken an hour, maybe 2, but in my head, it wasn't just a shelf. It was a test of my competence as a capable adult. And so, the spiraling began. First came the research phase. I spent hours on YouTube. Not just one video on how to hang a shelf, but dozens. Videos on finding studs, using drywall anchors, and comparing laser levels to bubble levels. I learned about the sheer strength of toggle bolts versus molly bolts. I was, in theory, the most knowledgeable amateur shelf hanger on the planet, but the shelf remained on the floor. Then, the planning phase. I measured the wall 100 times. I used masking tape to mark the spot. Was it too high? Too low? Would it catch the morning light just right for the succulents I planned to put on it? I drew diagrams. I made pro and con lists. My brain had elevated this simple task to the level of a master's thesis. The pressure was mounting. Finally, the tool acquisition phase. My drill, I decided, wasn't good enough. I needed a better drill. I spent a week reading reviews, comparing torque and voltage. I convinced myself that the project's success hinged entirely on having the perfect tool. This excuse bought me more time, more distance from actually doing anything. All the while, the internal monologue was a relentless loop. What if the holes aren't perfectly level? It will look terrible forever. What if you hit a pipe? You could cause thousands in damage. What if it's not secure and everything comes crashing down? And the big one, everyone knows how to do this. If you mess this up, it just proves you're completely useless. The fear was never about the shelf. It was about what a crooked shelf would say about me. It was about creating a tangible, visible, undeniable mistake. The fear was about failure and judgment, mostly from myself. That shelf sat there, week after week, becoming a source of shame. It was a physical symbol of being stuck. I was waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect tools, and a perfect moment of confidence that was never going to arrive. The turning point, the shattering of paralysis. One Saturday I was at my desk, trying to work, but mostly just staring at the wall where the shelf was supposed to be. I was drowning in that familiar sea of anxiety and self-criticism. The weight of this stupid, simple task felt immense. I had turned it into a monster, and I was just tired. So tired of the planning, the worrying, the waiting. I was tired of letting a piece of wood defeat me. In that moment, something snapped. It wasn't courage or a sudden burst of motivation. It was more like a sigh of surrender. I gave up on the idea of perfect. I decided with a profound sense of exhaustion that a crooked shelf was infinitely better than no shelf at all. Done is better than perfect, I mumbled to myself, a phrase I'd heard 1,000 times but never truly felt until right then. I stood up. I didn't grab the fancy new drill I'd researched but never bought. I grabbed my old dusty one. I didn't use my complex diagrams. I just picked up the shelf, held it against the wall, and eyeballed it. It looked fine, good enough. I grabbed a pencil and, without a level, made 2 quick marks. I drilled the first hole. My heart was pounding. It felt like a point of no return. Drywall dust puffed out, smelling of finality. I put in an anchor, drilled the second hole. I screwed in the brackets. Out of morbid curiosity, I put the level on one. It was slightly off. Not a disaster, but a true perfectionist would have noticed. For a split second, the old voice flared up. "See? It's ruined. Take it down and start over." But this time a new voice answered. It was quiet and calm. It said, "So what? Move on." I put the wooden plank on the brackets and stood back. It was a shelf on a wall, and it was a little crooked. If you really looked, you could see one side was about a quarter-inch higher. The old me would have been horrified, seeing it as a glaring beacon of incompetence. But the new me, the me who was tired of waiting, just felt a wave of unbelievable relief. It wasn't perfect, but it was done. It was real. For months, I had a perfect theoretical shelf in my mind and a useless plank on my floor. Now, I had a real, tangible, slightly crooked shelf on my wall, and it could hold books. It worked. That tiny, imperfect action shattered the illusion. It proved my fear-driven stories were just that, stories. The wall didn't crumble. I didn't hit a pipe. No alarm bells went off signaling my failure as a human being. I had made a small mistake, and the world didn't end. In fact, my world got slightly better, because now I had a shelf. The momentum was astonishing. The paralysis was broken. Because I had given myself permission to be imperfect, other tasks I'd been avoiding suddenly seemed less daunting. If I could survive a crooked shelf, maybe I could survive a messy first draft of an email or a phone call that wasn't perfectly scripted. That crooked shelf became my symbol. It's a daily reminder that progress is born from action, not flawless planning. It taught me the goal isn't to avoid mistakes, but to learn to tolerate them. It proved in the most concrete way possible that the only way to stop waiting is to start doing, no matter how imperfectly. The framework for action, your toolkit for breaking free. That crooked shelf gave me a blueprint for dismantling the perfectionism trap, and it's not complicated. It just requires a willingness to be a beginner again, to be awkward, and to be gloriously imperfect. Here are the lessons from the crooked shelf, turned into a framework you can use today. Step 1. The 15-minute mandate. The biggest hurdle is the overwhelming size of the task. Your brain sees write the book and immediately freezes because the gap between here and the finished product feels infinite. So, we make the task ridiculously small. This is the 15-minute mandate. Pick that thing you've been putting off. Set a timer for just 15 minutes. For those 15 minutes, you're just going to touch the project. The goal is not to make progress. The goal is simply to start. If you're a writer, you write anything, even "I don't know what to write," over and over. If you're a coder, you open the file and tinker with one line. If you're cleaning the garage, you pick up one thing. This works because it lowers the stakes to almost zero. Your brain can't justify a full-blown panic attack over 15 minutes. It breaks the all-or-nothing cycle. You'll often find that starting was the hardest part. Those 15 minutes might just turn into 30. But even if they don't, you've already won. You took action. Step 2. Define good enough before you start. Perfectionism loves a moving target. When done is a vague idea of perfect, you can tweak and polish forever. You'll get stuck in an endless loop because you never defined the finish line. Before you start a task, explicitly define your good enough criteria. What is your minimum viable product? For a blog post, it might be a 1,000-word draft with an intro, 3 points, and a conclusion. It does not need to be typo-free. For my shelf, it should have been, the shelf is securely on the wall and is reasonably level. Write it down. This is a contract with your future perfectionist self. When you find yourself obsessing over a tiny detail, look at your contract. Have you met the criteria? If yes, you have permission to stop. It's better to have a good idea out in the world than a perfect one living in edit mode forever. This isn't about producing shoddy work. It's about separating meaningful improvement from fear-driven tinkering. Step 3. Diagnose your core fear. To beat this, you have to stop fighting the symptom, procrastination, and treat the disease, fear. Perfectionism is just the mask. So take a moment and ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? Be brutally honest. Is it fear of judgment? Are you terrified of what your boss, friends, or strangers online will think? Is it fear of failure? Have you tied your identity so closely to success that any failure feels like a personal indictment? Is it fear of disappointing yourself? Are your own standards so impossibly high that it feels safer not to even try? Name the fear. I'm afraid that if I post this, my colleagues will think I'm foolish. Once you've identified it, you can see it for what it is. A powerful but manageable thought. You can't fight an enemy you can't see, so turn on the lights and look the monster in the eye. Step 4. Practice strategic self-compassion. When you procrastinate, what's your immediate reaction? For most of us, it's a brutal chorus of self-criticism. You're so lazy. What's wrong with you? This self-attack feels productive, like you're whipping yourself into shape. But you're doing the exact opposite. Berating yourself just dumps more shame and anxiety into your system, which deepens the freeze response. Self-criticism is not a motivator, it is a paralytic. The strategic antidote is self-compassion. This isn't about letting yourself off the hook, it's a tactical shift. Instead of, "I'm so useless," try, "I notice I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about this." That's a normal response when stakes feel high. Instead of, "I've wasted the whole day," try, "Okay, the morning didn't go as planned. What's one small thing I can do right now to move forward for 15 minutes? This approach calms your nervous system and keeps you in a problem-solving mindset instead of a shame spiral. Kindness isn't an indulgence, it's your most effective weapon. Step 5. Make perfectionism your muse, not your master. You don't have to kill your perfectionist side. That desire for excellence is a powerful engine. The problem is you've hooked it up to the brakes instead of the accelerator. It's time to give it a new job. Perfectionism has no place in the starting process. That stage is for messy, chaotic, imperfect action. The perfectionist's job comes at the end of the process. Its role is to be the editor, not the creator. It's the refiner. Once the crooked shelf is on the wall, the perfectionist muse can say, "Okay, how can we make the next one a little straighter?" Once the first draft is done, the perfectionist can help sharpen the prose. By creating this separation, you turn perfectionism into a partner for improvement, rather than a gatekeeper that stops you from ever beginning. It becomes your muse for making things better, not your master that demands you be perfect from the start. This isn't magic, it's a practice. It's choosing action over analysis, progress over perfection, and self-compassion over self-criticism. And it starts right now. So here is my challenge to you. Think about that one thing. You know the one. The project collecting dust. The goal that feels too big. The dream you've locked in the someday folder of your mind. Now, identify the single, smallest, most laughably tiny, imperfect action you can take to move it forward. Not tomorrow. Today. Is it sending that one email, writing one sentence, lacing up your running shoes and just stepping outside for 5 minutes? Whatever it is, I want you to commit to it. And more than that, I want you to share it. In the comments below, tell us the one tiny, imperfect action you are going to take. Let's create a community of action. By writing it down, you're taking the first step out of the shadows of waiting and into the light of doing. Your comment isn't just a comment, it's a contract with yourself. Let's hold each other accountable not for perfect results, but for the courageous act of starting. Conclusion: the myth of the perfect moment is the most dangerous story we tell ourselves. We wait for inspiration to strike like lightning, but motivation isn't a prerequisite for action. It is a byproduct of it. You don't think your way into a new way of acting. You act your way into a new way of thinking. That crooked shelf in my office is still there. I've never fixed it. It's one of the most important things I own. Every time I look at it, it reminds me that my potential isn't unlocked by flawless planning. It's unlocked by doing. It's found in the courage to drill the first hole, write the first sentence, and make the first call. Your great work won't be born from a perfect plan. It will be born from 1,000 imperfect attempts. It will be shaped by your mistakes, refined by your failures, and brought to life by your stubborn refusal to wait any longer. The prison of waiting is comfortable, but its walls are imaginary. The key is in your hand. It's that one small action. Take it. The wait is over. Stop waiting. Start doing.